So today we're talking to Hillary. Hillary has done copywriting her whole life.
She's very good at it.
Very good at it. I actually worked with her. She was the copywriter for when I worked with Death of the Stock Photo. So she did one of her intensives with us where we worked with her throughout the day and she kind of rewrote our content. In this episode, though, she talks about how she doesn't do that anymore and now works on retainer with her clients. But the bigger question that we had for her was, how did she launch her own course? So she came out with her own copywriting course called The Word Shops. And there are two different ways you can work on it, sort of at your own pace, do it yourself, and then do it together. So sort of like this group live version.
In-person version. Yeah. And so, or live version. It's not like in person, but digitally.
Right.
One of the things that impressed me about her is that she has helped a lot of other people with their launches. And so she's been around the world. She's helped a lot of people do exactly what she's doing now. Mm-hmm. And doing it this time, she talked about what parts of it were difficult. She decided to outsource some of the things that she's worked on that she normally could do herself.
Yeah, almost everything but content development.
Yeah. And so I think that was interesting because there's so much of what she's doing that she could have bootstrapped but didn't. And so she talks a little bit about why she did those things, what she learned from hiring a number of people to work for her.
I mean, if we want to get kind of specific before you listen to the episode, she hired someone to do video, photo, web design,
she hired different people to do each of those things. Yeah.
Book cover design. So like as I got looped in, because full disclosure, we did the sales page. She kind of was like, here's what everyone's working on. And it was like this mini creative team of people that we all admired each other's work and loved Hillary. So we talked to her about that. We talk about, why the Kardashians have a great brand.
Yeah, we spent a good amount of time on that. If you hang out around the internet and pay attention to Hillary, you see she did Allie's done the 100-day challenge a couple times, and Hillary did it, and it was 100 days of Kanye, which was essentially, I think, just finding a different image or quote from him or something to post every day for 100 days, which is amazing.
Yeah. I can't believe I say GIF now. I'm disappointed in myself.
Yeah.
It's GIF, right? I mean, it's
oh my
GIF.
gosh.
I don't know.
Yeah.
This is just frustrating that I opt for the weird peanut butter version.
I know that producer Michael and I disagree on this, and I'm glad he's just not mic'd right now.
So keep listening if you want to hear more about course launches and copywriting and creativity and the Kardashians.
Nailed it.
Hillary, welcome to the Wonder Jam cast. What if that's how I talked the whole time? I was like, I even have my hands in prayer.
Yeah.
Prayer mode.
She's like a little Buddha Allie right now.
Okay, but for real, Hillary, tell us about yourself. Whatever spiel you want to give.
Yeah, what do you do?
All right. Thank you so much for having me, guys. First of all, I'm so excited to be here on this glorious morning. Yes. I am Hillary Weiss. I am a copywriter, ghostwriter, writer, and writing coach and creator of the Word Shops. And I am just about to launch this copywriting program, aka the Word Shops, which is a copywriting course for unconventional entrepreneurs. And it really focuses on helping people both find their voice and also build their muscle memory for flexing their creativity and originality and uniqueness in everything that they create. So you can focus on writing an about, home, or sales page in the course, or you can just jump in and join me for it live. There's a whole range of options. But what I really love to do is I love to help entrepreneurs and online businesses really uncover their voice and what makes them so fantastic, so unique, and so irresistible in the space.
That's amazing. I already knew some of that because...
How did you know, Allie?
We helped you design your sales page, which was a blast. I've told people that it's one of my favorite web things I've ever made.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Why is that? I know why.
You
tell me why.
Well, one, I think Hillary had a vision, and she let all of the creative people do their thing, which was awesome.
Also, you have some dope photography that's super fun.
You write all of your
and
content.
The words are super great. And so that's the biggest, every time we do a website, it's like, man, if we can have great photography and great words, website design becomes a playground.
Oh, yeah.
And if we don't have either of those things, it becomes like...
Yeah, it's like Yeah, I need to find like the perfect analogy of what it's like. Maybe it'll come to me throughout the episode. So let's talk a little bit about the different, your whole description of yourself. Talk about those different areas. So like ghostwriting, you know, helping other people write, writing for clients, maybe more of like a one-on-one service. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I actually, I've had a few business models over the years. I was doing the project by project thing for a while, and then I was working intensive style with clients over 1, 3, and 5 days. And now I actually work almost exclusively retainer style with clients, which is really fun.
Okay.
But I have a core 4 group of clientele, and sometimes I'll take on another project here and there, but mostly I just stay focused on creative strategy for these long-term folks. But what I really enjoy about my work, I think I started doing a lot of web copy and websites, and that was always fun. I kind of miss that, actually. And now that I'm with long-term clients, it's more launches and long-term strategy and content development and all of that stuff. But I run the whole gambit. I do scripts, I do sales funnels, I do blog post ghostwriting, I do book ghostwriting, I do websites, and gosh, what else is there? Basically, I'm a jack of all trades when it comes to copy, and it's an absolute
Do you feel
blast.
like because you have a passion and a love and a skill when it comes to writing, you can write for anything?
Absolutely. You know, I think it really comes down to process with copywriting, especially when you're writing in somebody else's voice. And that's been one of the biggest joys for me throughout this whole journey, is really creating a process to help people uncover their own voice and their own truth along the way. And I think it really does start with asking yourself the right questions and learning how to listen to yourself and trust yourself and the way you want to say things. So and also a huge part of my work is helping people focus on fun. Because I think that's actually a huge part of my the creative process for my course launch and everything. I just wanted people to enjoy themselves and have a good time. Because if it feels like a chore, it's not going to be as good.
Yeah. Oh, that's true of like anything, right? So this whole, like we talked about before, this whole season is focused on below the surface. So all the things that go on behind the scenes, or things that we've learned as business owners that a lot of people don't get to talk about or hear about. So transitioning from the stuff that you do all the time, let's talk about your latest online course that you are starting as of recording now. You're starting that process. By the time it launches, talk a little bit more, like we're talking on October 1st, but let's hear more about that.
A little bit about the, like, sort of what's about to go down or the experience of the course.
Let's talk about what's about to go down.
I built the workshops to kind of fit 2 categories. So I've got the one for a version for the DIY folks, which is static, but also includes email support from me, just like little, like, hey, how you doing, kind of check-ins from an automated email sequence. They get videos and transcripts and stuff, but the live course is really the crown jewel of the whole operation. And I keep it really small. I actually ended up running 2 beta tests of the course back in the spring, and I had one with 6 people and one with 9 people, and strangely, like 9 people, that doesn't seem like a huge number. It was almost too much. I just it's so high touch. And what I'm super passionate about teaching, and I'm super passionate about giving people the support they need to thrive. So what I end up doing in the class, and I switched it from 1 week, which was a little crazy with all the content I have, to 4 weeks.
Okay.
And so they're going to have a class every Monday, and then we have a check-in and Q&A at the end of the week. And then that goes on for 3 weeks, where they're working through the 4 modules of the course, which are brand voice development, content structure and strategy, sales, and then writing style. And then so they'll be working through the modules for 3 weeks, and then there's an intensive writing week. And this is actually an element of the course that I'm really proud of developing, because it's helped participants get fantastic results, because they are forced, first of all, to write their damn first draft.
Like they have to do the thing, not just listen about it. Yeah.
Exactly. They have to do the thing. And I'm going to try to figure out a way to kind of expand it to make it open for more people. But right now, the way I'm doing it, it has to stay small, because they're writing their first draft, and then they do peer review. Everyone has a copy buddy for accountability. And this is actually something I'm doing in the challenge that I'm running right now as well. Everyone has their little blog buddy. But you have your writing buddy, and then you do peer review. And then in the middle of the week, you get one-on-one review with me. So I sit with my participants for half an hour and run through the course and kind of talk about where they could tighten up ideas, what's good, what's working, what's not. And the whole goal is to help people refine their process and, again, give them this muscle memory of learning how to review their stuff and edit themselves and look for patterns in their writing that are strong or that might need a little bit of work. For example, one of my students in the beta, I went to her about page and it was just like huge paragraph, huge paragraph, huge paragraph. And I'm reading it and I was, this girl has a PhD. Wait a minute. Hang on. I recognize the style of writing because my sister has a history PhD and I used to read over her back when she was in school. So we got on the phone and I was like, you have a doctorate, don't you? She was like, yeah, I do actually. So I was like, okay, so we're going to need to reel that in a little bit for the layman. But just being able to to work with people to understand the way they think and their own writing process has been really powerful for people. And there's also a lot of encouragement built in and positivity because, again, you do your best stuff when you're having fun.
That's
Truth.
amazing.
So this course is very involved. Like it's a very hands-on thing. You're not like, this doesn't sound like something where you're just like, hey, go download a PDF and like, thank you very much. Right. Like this
specific portion. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that is such, why have you decided to do that? You've been very involved in other launches and helping other people in the same kind of process. What made you make the choices that you've made, or what has influenced you?
So a couple of things. I just really want to help people, and I think copy is such a giant obstacle for so many entrepreneurs who are even good writers and who have strong voices naturally. But there's so much conflicting information out there, and there's so much stress that goes into it because it's like, should I use this proven sales formula, but it's too long or too salesy and it doesn't sound like me? Should I be following so-and-so strategies who says I have to do this, but it doesn't feel right? What I want to teach people is how to take the basic components of copy and kind of break the rules. Yeah. Because once you understand how things fit together and work, you can shape and mold your concepts and content in a way that really makes you unique and makes you stand out in your market. So the reason why it's so hands-on, especially in the live version, is because that's not something I can just necessarily give you a couple pages about and then send you on your way. Yeah. All the modules are very in-depth because I want to explain everything. I've poured my brain into these modules and have held nothing back. So the one-on-one support is a little more premium, again, for people who are ready to step forward and start developing their voice with professional support behind them. But the DIY version also includes videos and transcripts of the live class. So you can watch the videos, which are about 2.5 hours long, and then just binge that in the weekend and dive into the exercises, or you can kind of take it week by week with the email support in the DIY version. And it's not about rushing. It's not about, you're going to watch this 4-hour class and then be an expert copywriter. It's about the build, and it's about helping people understand that it's practice, but giving them all the tools to kind of move through that process so they can really, really develop their own voice and style.
That's the truth, man. It's like people, we work through, every website we work through, copy is involved. And I would say 99% of the people we've worked with, and I just made up 99%, but maybe it's like 90%.
It's a fact.
But 99% of the people we work with do not also work with a copywriter. And the people that do, or when we have a copywriter brought into the process, it makes a world of difference, to the point where in our process working with you, it just confirmed this thing that we say all the time, but sometimes we just don't have a copywriter on our team. Yeah. And we should. To me, my friend Kevin says this all the time. But Kevin always says that writing is the most pure form of creativity, and that you're creating something from just words, or just you're making this direct connection between your imagination and brain and somebody else's, which I feel like it's true. So when I'm working with our team to build a website for me, like right now, producer Michael's designing my other podcast website, I just send him a Google Doc with all of the words finished and some screen grabs of other things that I like. And then everything gets done and it's amazing. And it so much has confirmed for me, working with you, even going through that process ourselves, you've got to start with message and words.
Well, I keep laughing to myself, Hillary, thinking about if you were like everyone else that we work with, who we love everyone else, but if you had just sent me, if you had just sent me a, an email that was like, just use placeholder copy, like, paragraph, lorem ipsum, and then I'll fill it in. It's almost like that's limiting the creativity of what writing can be, because it's not like you just sent 20 paragraphs. It's so much more about how you're communicating, and us not being copywriters, we're just like that
truth.
Yeah.
And everyone loves to say like people don't read, and you're like, no, that's not true.
They're just not
people
reading your
like
bad stuff.
There's like more content consumed, words included, than ever before in human history. Like people are just pounding through. People don't read a boring book anymore, or people don't like struggle through your shittily written blog post or like business book that's 12 chapters but should just be like one. Like people don't do that anymore at all. Because we can just go to YouTube and watch what did we just watch? What rabbit hole did we just fall down? Oh, like the America's Got Talent people. But you can just like get into YouTube and like get distracted,
For sure.
Allie's looking at me. She's like,
I was not a part of this America's Got Talent rabbit hole, and I feel offended that I wasn't a part of it.
No, you were, because it started with the Windex. It started with a Windex commercial. We saw a Windex commercial, and it's the one about like the daughter that grows up, and it's like what's between us connects us, and it's like
it's amazing.
Allie sent me this at like 2 a.m, and I was working. I was sitting out on her patio working, and she's like, "Watch this commercial," and she's like, "This is why you don't need your logo all over everything." And it's like this.
It makes you cry.
Yeah, and I was like, this is amazing. But so I started reading the comments, and a guy's like, why this little girl's voice is like making me tear up. So I figured out it's Grace Vanderwall, who won America's Got Talent or whatever. And I like started watching all of her old videos.
Yeah, she's young.
Anyway, so that's where this rabbit hole was. And you were a part of it, Allie. I won that argument. We just had a mini argument.
I don't agree. Episode. Anyways, Hillary, tell us. So I want to get into some of the nitty gritty. I want to know how long it took from idea to launch, like right now, let's say.
Okay. It took about 3 years because, so a little bit about me. I started, pardon?
I said, dang.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it was a long ass time. But so I'll explain a little bit kind of about how this all came to pass. So I started copywriting in 2011 when I was not but a wee baby writer. And the logic back then was kind of like, okay, you've worked with a few clients, like now you should diversify your revenue streams and like make a course. And I was like, people were asking me to do it. And I was like, guys, I don't know enough. Like, don't make me do this.
Not yet.
I'm an indie music listener, and I was a little emo child, which makes me worry about being a senior in just about anything. So I have to be legit, guys. I have to be legit. It's like I was one of those kids growing up who was like, oh, you think you like that band? You only like one song. But so logic, like you have to do the work before you can claim something and claim to be an expert or claim to be a fan of anything. So I wanted to really take the time. And in 2000, and I told myself I would give myself at least 2 years. 3 years later, in 2014, I was like, okay, looking around, what do I really want to create? And this was kind of the golden era of online courses. So I was thinking about why there were so many copywriting courses out there. And I was like, well, can I even compete? I don't know. And what I decided to do was to do the old fashioned thing and sit down and talk to people. So I ended up interviewing probably like a few dozen entrepreneurs just over a few months, just getting on the phone and being like, hey, here's what I'm thinking of doing. Like, what do you need most from a copywriting course that you're not getting? And the answers kind of ran the gambit. People wanted help with the doing as well as the theory. People wanted to know about writing style, because I think that's something that I've always had kind of naturally, is this really, really strong writing style. Just because I'm such a loud person, it's not that I'm particularly good at my job. I'm just extremely noisy. So yeah, exactly. So kind of figuring out how to help people. And I found out there was a lot of stress because, again, like as we were talking about earlier, there's so much conflicting information about what makes great copy. And there are people who are like, it's not good copy if it doesn't follow X, Y, and Z rules. But at the same time, like as you were saying, Adam, we're definitely in a golden age of television and commercials right now. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I was watching the Emmys last night, and I was just like, damn, we really are.
What if we also said we're in a golden age of music too? Would that start a fight?
150%. We're in a golden age of media. And I think these Windex commercials where it's about this little girl, and the Windex commercial isn't like, are you a housewife that needs to clean a thing? Let's run through your pain points, and then I'll give you the benefits and solutions. It's about creating these emotionally evocative experiences. And that takes practice to understand kind of how to meet your consumer where they are, and helping you develop this style that makes you so unmistakable and brings people coming back again and again. So I wanted to give people the tools to do that so they could confidently practice and test and experiment and really develop this voice. And I've gotten some really wonderful feedback from my betas. I had a bunch of people tell me, I rewrote my site after the course, and I've had client and collaboration requests rolling in. Like, I don't have to pitch anymore. This is the only course that has ever really clicked with me. And it's just awesome to hear, just because I put so much work into it. So back to the original question. I did like a few dozen interviews, and then it took me like a year and a half to finish the modules, because what I did is after the interviews, I built outlines, and then I sent the outlines to the people I interviewed for feedback. Okay. Because in the interviews, I was like, what are you most interested in learning and all that stuff? And I got thumbs up, thumbs down. I got suggestions, because you can't, necessarily let the consumer run the show when you're an expert. But I really wanted the people who I'm writing this for to be very involved. So I wrote the outlines, and then I actually had to rearrange my whole business to write this, because I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket. I couldn't do that. But the way I was working at the time, which was intensive style, there would have been no space for me to do this. So I switched to retainer style to give myself a little more room. And then in July, in the late spring, so May, when I really went in earnest with creation, I fired half of my clients and focused on the core four, so I could spend time doing this, but still have income coming in. Brutal.
That's beautiful.
Who made the not who made the cut, but how did you decide? Was
who
it
did you fire?
No, you don't need to tell that.
I'm good people, and I'm sad about it because I miss them.
Sure.
But it was mostly, it was actually really well timed, because a couple of the people I was working for, sometimes my bread and butter is just like overall content for businesses. So I was working with a couple of startups whose blogs I was writing, and it was great money, but some of them had switched out of the retainer model and they were hiring more writers. So they were like, okay, we're going to switch you over from the retainer to project by project. Like, we love working with you and we'd like to continue. Here's how much we're paying per post. And I was like, nah. Guys, I can't do it. Like, I cannot be waiting for, I'm sorry, like my business model, it doesn't, and it's so empowering to be like, your business model no longer fits my business.
Oh my gosh.
I've evolved.
We did another recording where we had a Q&A, and a listener wrote in and asked about changing their prices and how to handle that. And that was the thing I said was just say you're changing your business model, or like, and all of a sudden you become like a smart, business person who has an MBA, because you said, well, my business model doesn't really afford these type of prices anymore.
Yeah. Which is true.
Yeah. And it is. And it should, that's the way it has to be. Like, you can't grow if you don't figure out how to say no to some stuff.
Yes.
Exactly. And I think I was about to, you made a really good point, and I'm lost my train of thought. Hang on.
I've got another train of thought I would like you to jump onto. This train of thought would be, you've worked with a lot of people who put together courses and are kind of thought leaders in some area. You are a practitioner, meaning you do that work and you teach people how to do that work. What do you think is, if someone is sitting here listening today, I could imagine some people are like, oh my gosh, I want to launch a course, or oh my gosh, why did that take her so long to launch her own course? Or all of those things. What do you think some of the benefits are to remaining a practitioner while you're also teaching, and not just like, there's a lot of people who are in your position who have fully jumped into just teaching and educating as their business model.
Absolutely. My mom, weirdly, gave me the best tagline of my life that I've ever heard anyone give me. And she said, you're always bold, but never reckless. And I think that any business, anytime you want to shift, I think it is a mistake to put all of your eggs. Again, I've said this like 5 times already. It's a mistake to put all your eggs in one basket. It is, because you cannot rely on anyone but yourself. You cannot count on something being a smash hit if you haven't tested it in the market. And ideally, in the future, I have a goal to pare down my client totals again, to just focus on two key clients who I've been working with for a long time, like both of them 4 or 5 years now, if they'll have me and if it makes sense. But first of all, I didn't want to cut myself off at the knees, because launching a course is expensive as hell. If you want to do it right, it just is. And I wanted to make sure I still had income coming in. It makes me it's more work, but somehow it makes me less stressed to know that if everything goes south and this launch tanks, and I totally embarrass myself, but I'm basically exactly where I am now. Yeah, I'm fine. I've got my plan B. I've got my clients. But again, like if you want to produce something quickly, fire all your clients. If you want to produce something safely, take your time. And I know some entrepreneurs who've thrown caution to the wind and just gone head first and been great. And I'm super proud of them. But I know more people who've been like, I fired all my clients. I'm doing this. I'm so hyped. And then all of a sudden it doesn't work. Like they have one strong launch, and then every launch after that, they run into problems, or there was that initial, this is your first product hype, and then it kind of fades out and you have to figure out how to sustain that. So it really gave me a way to experiment and play and have fun and just really put my heart and soul into creating something awesome without worrying that it would be the end of the world if it didn't do well.
Yeah. No, that is like so key. I even think of what you just said. If you want to go quickly, this kind of goes into the thing that I started thinking about while you were talking, even though I'm trying not to do that while people talk. But the idea that if you want to launch something really quickly, like quit all your other, streams of income or whatever. But if you had done that, you also wouldn't have been able to collaborate with all these different creative people. So I remember when you first contacted us about designing your sales page, you were like, also, this person's doing my photos. This person's designing my, my module PDFs. This person's designing my cover. How did you always know that you wanted to do that? Had you seen other people doing it well? Did you feel like that's lacking? Like, talk us through that choice to collaborate.
So here's full disclosure. I did not. So I knew that I wanted you guys. I knew who I wanted doing what, just because I'm sure you guys do amazing ebooks. So it's not like you guys don't do good ebooks.
Oh, for
sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to work with a specific range of people. There were creatives who I'd been circling for a long time, who I was like, yeah, I got to work with them because I feel like they'd be the best person for this project. And it was a gut feeling because I felt like giving people one item each to focus on that I felt like they could really rock would make the process more enjoyable for them, and also give me a lot of sort of really awesome stuff to work with and bring together. And but I didn't realize until I'd started, and my ebook designer, Lindsay, she was like, you're working with 7 people on this project? And I was like, yep, I sure am. She was like, how the hell are you going to get all of this into like a cohesive thing that fits together? And I was like, well, that's a really great question. I haven't actually thought about that. But I am nothing if not clear in my vision, which is unfortunate in that I've done a few launches now, and I've done a few rebrands of myself now, and I know how to pull creative ideas together with a little practice. Yeah. So I was fortunate. I think it all came out really cohesive. Like, you've seen the ebook, and you've obviously seen the sales page, and the videos really coming together and stuff. And it was a big team, but I still don't think it was the wrong idea, because I think if you give someone a huge project, like if I had come to you guys and I would have been like, hey fam, all right, I got a sales page. I need an ebook that's gigantic. I have a video to do, and I need some photos. Like, can you help me? Chances are you're going to be more excited about some elements of the project than others, and other elements are going to feel rushed. They're going to be like an uphill battle for you guys, and I'm going to be in your inbox for like months and months, and even though I already am, but for like months and months. Fix this, and I would be the most annoying person in the world. So I found kind of diversifying and honing in on people and approaching them about pieces of the project that played to their strengths. It felt like the right call, and it really was, I think, at the end of the day, just because everything's looking kick ass. So I'm hyped.
Gosh,
I would also say that your clarity, I mean, how you had clear vision, but you also have, when you provide I'm going to just keep going back to this forever, because I think whoever's listening to this is probably in something they're doing is under investing on copy. Having the words put together beforehand allows you to let people who make visuals do their thing, because the message is cohesive and it's going to bring all those people back eventually. Yeah. Which is very cool.
Yeah. I think if I had been newer at it, I would have gone to one person and had them do the whole thing. But because this wasn't my first rodeo, thank God, I was able to kind of be like, okay, I think I can manage spreading this out, because I know what people need to know and I know what they need to move forward with clarity. And I think I called the aesthetic like vaporwave business class or something.
Oh, you did. Yeah, it was amazing.
I gave stuff a name, and I gave you a massive creative brief where I'm like chattering for like paragraphs and paragraphs.
No,
so I like I gave you all the tools. I think good things would happen.
I also feel like, and I'll talk a little bit about like working with you. So we talked about it for, a couple months before we got started. You also, and I feel like everything I'm about to say is characteristics of good clients for us, but it was someone, it's someone who is looking ahead and not just like, hey, do you think we could get this up in like 4 weeks? We talked about it months before we even started. You put down your deposit months before we got started. We had a start date in our calendar. You had a creative brief, you had a mood board, you introduced all of the people who had a part in the project on an email and linked to our work. I at least as a designer felt like there was that accountability with you, but also everyone else working. So if I just totally like disappear, that doesn't help anyone. If I was just like, bye, and I just, deleted all my social media.
I wouldn't blame, but yeah.
Yeah, that would have been very weird. But can you imagine, I guess this is like kind of my next question, doing all of this yourself? Like there are probably people out there who want to just do it themselves. When is that a good idea? Is it ever a good idea? Is it always a bad idea? What do you think?
I don't think, I mean, if you are a wizard and you have so many
an actual wizard,
a literal wizard, then you should do it yourself. But everyone has, I think so much of being a professional creative is this lesson we all come back to time and time again, is that we have very specific strengths. And when we try to, we can like go outside of those strengths and learn new things and like try and do things. But at the end of the day, when it's a consumer facing thing, when it's something we want to sell to people that establishes trust, that is designed to kind of bring our knowledge out into the wider world, we have, it's not something that we can just sit down and DIY in a weekend. Like, it's just not a good idea. If you're doing your first ebook and you figure out how to design it on Canva and it's like free or like $20 and you're in your first year of business, by all means, go ahead. But when you are developing something that's supposed to be a signature for you, focus on your strengths. And I cannot even imagine trying to DIY this. I DIY'd my landing page for my challenge, and it's just so garbage. I was looking at it like, I hope Allie doesn't look at this.
I haven't seen it, but I'm totally looking at it after this.
Oh, it's terrible. Don't look at it. Don't look too closely. It's terrible for me. I have high standards, but
it also works.
Dude.
That's the most important thing. That's why I DIY'd that one, because first of all, I've invested so much money. Like, I can swing this one myself. It's just a landing page. But that was it. And I even hired someone to build my funnels for me, just because like I don't have the time to sit and figure this out when I want to be focused on creating the best product that I possibly can.
If you could start all over, not that that's what you would do, like lessons learned or things that you would do differently as far as hiring a team of creative people, there's probably a lot of people listening to this who are like, oh, in the future, I will be in that position.
Yeah.
Best practices, things to really focus in on, or things to let go of.
Yes. Actually, the one thing that I kind of wish I'd done a little differently is actually for my shoot and for my first video shoot, because I ended up having to do two. I actually rented a studio, which was really cool, and I really enjoyed doing that. But because every other shoot I'd done had been in my living room or like the living room of a friend or out in the park, like behind my house here in Brooklyn. And so I was like, okay, I rented a studio in Hoboken, and it was really cheap. I also wanted to use this platform called Pure Space, which is basically like Airbnb for studio spaces and stuff. It was super sweet. But I went and I did a photo shoot there, and I have no problem, no regrets doing the photo shoot, but I did the video shoot, and I actually was surprised. I don't have a lot of experience on video, and that is hard, man. That is really tough. Like, I wrote a script, and I had it on a teleprompter on my iPad put under the camera. And so we had this whole video, and the script was great, but it was me looking down at the damn teleprompter. So at the end of the day, like, it just didn't work. We didn't use any of the footage. I ended up we might use one of them for a Facebook ad because it's just hilarious, and I really want to find it. Not to toot my horn, I think it's very funny. I want to find a way to use it in the future. But we ended up reshooting just in my apartment again.
Okay. So do you feel like it was because you were more comfortable, like in your home?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was also because we switched the style. So I didn't have a script. I just answered questions. And it was my dear friend Juliet, who I go way back with. She's a great videographer. I also have to work with people I feel really comfortable with when I'm on camera, because I'm super awkward in front of a camera. She just asked me questions, and then we asked them a few times, reshot it, and then kind of strung it together from there. And I like the end result a lot. It's definitely doesn't look like me sitting in a studio, but I don't regret doing it because it was a great learning experience, and I have not regretted a single cent I've ever spent on branding ever. And I spent a lot of money on branding in my time. But I think it's just so important to remember that don't go pro level with something if you don't have a ton of practicing just yet.
Yeah, like the first, like almost try it out in a really affordable way first.
Exactly.
Can definitely be. I mean, that's why we offer a class called Branding on a Budget. We'd rather someone try to brand their own business first, realize it's too difficult, and then hire a designer.
Allie does this like demonstration about how to make logos using Canva, and a lot of people try it, and some people make a thing amazing. That's cool.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening, we started that whole class because we were teaching this, we're teaching about branding to people who were like, had types of businesses where they probably would never hire us. So we're like, what can we do? They're just going to do it themselves anyways. Like, let's not try and like end this with a pitch to hire us. So we taught people to do their own thing, and then people went out and tried it and failed at it and then hired us, which we never thought we would get clients from this thing. No. And it's actually turned into a lot of people. And people who come from that, like, just blanket trust.
They have a lot of appreciation.
Because they're like, one, I know for 100% fact that I cannot do this, and I have tried, but I trust the way that you think about it, which is funny. Like, we teach people as much as we possibly can how to do it. It's still not enough. And they still show up.
I guess the thing that I want to talk about is all of the different components of an online class. I think if someone has never bought admission into an online course or anything like that, I guess all I'm trying to say is there's a lot of people that come to us that are interested in passive income. They like hearing that buzzword. They like the idea of making money while they sleep, but there's so much more that goes into it. In almost list form, let's talk about all the different like components of launching something like the workshops. Even from just letting people understand, like, oh, I didn't even think about, you have to figure out how someone is receiving this. Is someone logging in? All of those different parts.
What handles my payment processing?
Yeah.
Yeah, God. Oh my God. That was so stressful. Poor, your developer, Matt, was like, I need a buy button link. And I was like, you want
You're like,
my
what is that going to be? Yeah. Can I send you my Stripe login?
I don't know, man. He's like, no, I need this. I was like, oh, Shopify. I have one of those. Hang on.
Yeah.
But it's just, you don't think about it. And this is actually the part that I did do myself because I know I need to understand how payment processes work and how these things are being delivered and all of that. And I'm using like ConvertKit for email delivery and product delivery and all that stuff. But all the elements that go into it, gosh, where do I even start? Well, first you have to make the thing.
I made the thing.
I decided actually not to go the teachable route for this one because A, Shopify is taking enough of my percentages, and B, I didn't think it was necessary because I have editable PDFs and videos and transcripts, and that's not something that I necessarily need a platform for. Like, I'm not quizzing people. They have their exercises in there. And I think maybe I'll use Teachable for it in the future if I do like a light version of it. But other than that, I decided to kind of set it up with email support every week, just like a check-in from me, helping them guide them through the process. And then videos and all that stuff coming in, again, every single week to keep them on pace, or they can sit down and binge the whole thing. But what surprised me, again, was the technical aspect. Like, I realized I needed a platform for payment processing, which is Stripe. I needed a platform for actually selling things, which is Shopify. I needed a tool for payment plans, which is Partially. I needed to figure out how to send people the preview version of the page, because I have about 100 insiders who have been asking me about the workshops for years and want to be the first to kind of see the sales page. So I have this pad next to me that's Breakfast at Tiffany's pad that my aunt gave me like 4 years ago, and it's just covered in to-do lists. And it's been really low tech, but I've just been having to write things down and cross them off, because there's so many tiny elements. And if you forget any on launch day, it can be the domino that sends the whole thing falling over. So there's just different things. And a welcome video, because you have to teach people how to use the course. I have to make sure everything's in Dropbox. I have to make sure that all the emails and things are QA'd. I need to make sure there's an abandoned cart sequence. Like, there are all these little things. And fortunately, the bulk of it is emails and stuff, which I can write in my sleep. But for somebody who may have a little bit more of a challenge with this, you have to give yourself time. So much to be able to figure it out. It's not something you can rush.
I think that's always, in every project we work on, just the quantity of writing that you end up doing, there's always details that you have to pay attention to. And maybe if you're launching, so if you're somebody listening to this and you're thinking, maybe you're smart at something, whether that's, I have a friend who's like a brilliant mixologist, and I want him to get into like teaching people stuff online so bad. Because he's fascinating. But if you're the person listening to this and you're smart at something, I think you might not need to worry about all of those details if you're just getting, your beta group, or you're sending it to, 20 people to test, to kind of go through your 100%. Content right away. You can do that in just like Google Docs or in something.
That's how I did it.
Yeah. And then from there, I think the difference with this launch, I'm planning on this being a significant stream of income, and people having an over-the-top experience with how well this is put together. And typically people who work with us tend to be like in the middle of those two things. They're not really sure if they want to DIY everything or what they can bootstrap, and they're not really sure, what do I need to pay attention to? We worked with a client at one point who was doing almost $1 million a year in business, and most of their business was like offline deliverables, but all people had to sign up for memberships online, and they were like stingy with how much they were paying online for their monthly hosting. So they would crash their website every time they tried to sell something. I was like, you guys would make like $100,000 more if you would stop doing that.
I know. No cutting corners with this stuff. Like, you really, it shows when you cut corners.
I want to make sure that we've talked about launches, but I want to talk a little bit about you. I want to talk a little bit about like skill development in the life of Hillary.
Yeah. Okay.
Allie, do you have any more like launch course questions? Okay.
No, I'm good.
So Hillary, talk about like why I want for people listening, I want them to understand like you're really good at words. In your own way, right? But why are you, if you're going to explain to somebody, like, let me explain to you why I'm good at words, or why I can write email copy in my sleep. Why is that?
Practice. Honestly, I've had close to 200 clients at this point, and maybe closer to 250 now. And I've written, just even in the past year, just hundreds and hundreds of emails, because buckets and funnels are the business right now. Apparently, it's not my favorite thing to write emails, but I do it. But I think what got me in the door, and I've seen this happen since to a couple of other writers who I'm close with in various Facebook groups and writing communities, is that I was able to lead with style. And then kind of that would draw people in, just in the sense of like, I see you're saying things in a unique way. I want to work with you because you can help me say things in a unique way. And the risk you run with that is people saying like, I want to sound cool. I want to sound like you. And you have to say like, I can't really just like give you my voice, because first of all, it's a bait and switch for your clientele.
Yeah.
And second of all, it doesn't serve you in the long term for the ultimate evolution of your brand and wherever you're headed. But interestingly, I found it helped a lot of people do. And I had one particular client by the name of Rachel Feldman, who's a wellness coach. And she's like super Philly girl, like black leather jacket, combat boots, like badass mom of two living in Boca, helping people get real about their health. And I was looking at her website that she wanted me to rewrite. And it just did not sound like her at all. Like on the phone, she would drop F-bombs and be like super like rock and roll. And like, I want you to just burn the F out of all the diet books and just like do things your way. And on her website, it was like, I help women live their best life through like nutritional, better nutrition, beautiful food on their plate. And I was like, Rachel, this isn't you. Like, what are you doing? And she was like, well, I don't think people will work with me if I was like, this is an alien, Rachel. She was like, people aren't going to want to work with me if I sound like this. I don't think if I don't sound professional, people aren't going to trust me. And I was like, no, like that's not how it works.
Incorrect, but go on.
Fine. Because using your own voice and figuring out your own style and saying things the way you want to say them not only helps to differentiate you in the market, but it also helps your ideal clients find you and your non-ideal clients self-select out. So like if somebody doesn't want a health coach that drops F-bombs and talking about setting fire to diet books, they can move along. But the people who really connect with that language are like, hell yes, like this is the coach I've been looking for. I'm so ready. Like let's get going. And a big part of my process with clients, and I haven't worked with a new client in a while, but normally I send them a document called the Brand Voice Brief, where the first thing I talk about is voice, like who their audience is, what makes them unique in the space, how they want to sound, their goals for the project, their bits of feedback that they hear from clients about what makes their work so great. That full range of kind of how they want to speak and be seen and heard in the space is so essential before we even talk any kind of strategy. Because once you're able to nail someone's unique turn of phrase and ideas, the better off you're going to be with the ultimate result. Because as my client Jen kind of says, there are very few original ideas, but there are original stories. So helping people kind of tell their original story became a huge part of what I do. And it was something that was kind of instinct for me at first, but I was able to really perfect a process and continue working with clients along these lines and with these goals in mind that help people really get great results for the long term.
That's amazing.
That's beautiful.
When I were like shaking our heads, I was like, oh yeah. It looked like we were probably listening to music, but we were listening to Hillary.
It looks the way that our dog looks when we scratch his back, where he's just like, No, when you said there's no original ideas, but that's Jen's. Who's Jen?
Yeah, who's Jen?
Jennifer Kem is a client of mine, and I think it's a popular phrase in marketing just because. And this is happening in my blog challenge right now. People are like, I don't have any original ideas. Nobody is going to care, and it's like, okay, but let's just face the reality that nobody has had your unique experiences. Nobody has the ideas exactly the way you have them. No one is coming to the table with everything you're coming to the table with. So the more you focus on that, just like, what do I think? What do I want to share? As opposed to what's get my audience to convert is so much more important, I think.
No, but there's a lot of podcasts in the world, and there's increasing number of podcasts. It's like growing as we speak. There's new podcasts being created. But one of our friends was like, "Oh my gosh, I just think your podcast is so original," and I was like, "I don't feel like that at all."
Right.
And I was like, interested. I go, tell me why, like, what about it do you think is original? And this is a friend who listens to a ton of stuff, consumes a lot of media. And then she listed off a bunch of ways that she thought it was interesting. And it really is just all about our perspective, right? Like, the only thing that's interesting about this is what questions we choose to ask you. Truth. Okay, so the other thing I want to bring up is you did this project called 100 Days of Kanye, right? And which is
we couldn't not bring it up.
Hillary. For anyone listening, Hillary texted me and was like, "Hey, when can we schedule a talk to just talk through Kanye?" I was like, "This is a good point."
That is a great question.
But so you did that, and then we got on a phone call, and you were talking to me about how you feel like you view popular culture, which like the Kardashian empire is like at the pinnacle of, but then Kanye is adjacent to that probably. Tell me about how you talked about how that influenced your thinking or writing, or it's something you pay attention to help you stay relevant. Like, to explain that a little bit.
How I started doing 100 Days of Kanye, or what happened as a result?
Yeah, you could tell a little bit about both of those things. But I'm really curious. I'm also curious about why you think that pop culture is something that should inform your writing or your style or your voice or things like that.
Okay, you want to get me talking for 2 hours, I see. Okay. No. I started doing 100 Days of Kanye basically on a dare by a friend of mine on Twitter and also a real life friend of mine called Stan Richardson. She's a wonderful designer. And I'm a fan of Kanye West in the most unabashed sense, because I'm actually a reformed Kanye hater. Because I was like, look at this idiot how dare he take the microphone from Taylor Swift at the Grammys, and like, how dare he like say he's the greatest and include a song called "I'm a God" on his Yeezus album. How dare he? And there's so much pseudo intellectual pearl clutching and hand wringing over like the quality of person Kanye West is, and I don't understand any of it. But it's how he keeps himself relevant, and he's learned how to play people using that. So to bring it kind of back to pop culture, what I find so fascinating about the Kardashians in general, and I'll move this to Kanye in a minute, but what I find so fascinating about the Kardashians in general is that they are a walking, talking, multi-human, breathing, living brand organism. And what they've really managed to do in this glorious modern age of ours, and there was I think it was a piece in Interview magazine that made this point really well, is that they are selling accessibility as opposed to, what's that word? Aspiration. So the reason why they're such a hit is because like they have these fabulous lives. No one can really hope to buy a Bentley and then like swat your sister with a purse because she doesn't let you have your moment like on television and have that whole thing. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but over time, they have developed this really wonderful personal relationship with their audience, and their audience is also their focus group. And what I appreciate so much about Kim Kardashian is that she listens to her audience. When she came out with her her makeup line. She was like, I'm listening to people, I'm listening to all the feedback and figuring out how I can make it better and like what you liked and didn't like about it. And instead of saying like, oh no, I'm the best, I'm going to go into hiding now because people disagreed with me. There's really this wonderful kind of symbiosis between her as a brand and her audience. She makes herself so relatable somehow to a certain type of person who are her targets, because she seems like a normal person and talks like a normal person somehow.
Dude, Allie is like smiling so big right now because you're so clearly articulating
everything that I feel.
Yeah,
I feel like people take Kim too personally, which I get. That's the whole brand. But that idea that she's dumb or any of that is like, it blows my mind when people say that.
I agree. And agreed. And this Interview magazine piece, I don't know if you've read it, Allie, but it was so good. It was her and Janet Mock, I think. It's really good, but she points out.
Yeah, I think I have. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the one where she was, she had the Jackie O look with North, and North then got an interview. Anyway, not that I know too much about this, but she had this wonderful section where she was like, you know what, like I am 10 years into this. I've built a multi-million-dollar empire and people still tell me I have no talent and I'm famous off the tech stage. Like I don't sing, I don't dance, I don't act, but I've managed to keep my family relevant for about 10 years. Like, can I get some props here? Like, can you please give some props? And it's so true because like, look at the reality superstars of the day when Kim kind of first hit the scene. It was Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie and like all of these, like the Jersey Shore, and all these people have kind of aged out of their reality television fame. Yeah. But Kim has managed to evolve with her market. Like I think she's a genius at using social media. Kimoji shut down the App Store. They made $1 million a minute. It was ridiculous. So she pays better attention than anybody else, and I understand how to control the narrative, which I think is another thing. And you asked me about Kanye, Adam. I promise I'm getting there, but I have one more point to make on this.
No, this is amazing.
I think about this a lot. Just because as a brand expert, you have to watch the masters, and I'm sorry, but like Kim Kardashian is a branding master. She just is. She's figured it out before anybody else did.
I think there's this, like I talked about the Windex commercial, but I think there's this thing where like Windex is inherently boring as possibly a thing could be. And they figured out how to like wrap an interesting story around them that makes me talk about them on this podcast, where with the Kardashians, even in Kanye, like he hasn't done anything forever, and he gets talked about every day in the press.
I know.
You're like, they're inherently interesting, and they don't have to wrap a story around them. They just
for like one
can choose which parts of their story they're telling.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And what I think Kris Jenner, to her credit, does so well is that nobody, like the drama happens in the family, but nobody talks about it really in the press, except with the exception of, I think, Kim's robbery in Paris a couple of years ago. Nobody really, they don't talk to the press until after the season airs. So you see these things happening and nobody confirms or denies, but they're filming it all. And that is just a way to sort of package your fame and choose how you distribute the stories about your family and own it. And I think that's such an interesting kind of approach, and it's so smart. Wow. And around the same time, I remember, so it was a really dark time in my life when Kim went offline for a few months after the Paris robbery. And I was like, I know, it was so weird. I would like go to her Instagram, like refreshing. I missed the outfit.
It's still from the same date. I know.
I was like, oh, it's
Allie did the exact same.
It's like
literally the same thing.
Yeah, I was like, I'm worried. Like, is she okay? Like, and I just also feel like she'd be a nice person. I don't feel like she'd be a jerk if I met her. So I'm just like, no, like, are you all right, girl? Like, thinking of you, like, sending get well soon cards.
All right. That's exactly how I felt.
But then and there was all this talk about it, and people were saying that she'd staged the robbery, and that, like, look at this fame-hungry family, and like the insults were flying. Like, the reactions were so mixed. So like, people attacked her for being robbed, like, violently. And then around that time on her birthday, Kanye put together this compilation of home videos of Kim, like, throughout her life and with the kids. And they're all shot in these, like, really low quality home videos. Her dad is on there and stuff, and he strung it together. And he posted it on his Twitter before he deleted his Twitter on her birthday. And you could kind of see her as so much more human. And I think I weirdly cried. Like, I watched that video about Kim Kardashian as a child and thinking about her and all that she's been through. And I was like, man, this is really upsetting to me, just that this is a human person. And I think that sharing that, and then all the home video style stuff that she released on her return from social media, because she started sharing all those kind of low res photos of her with the kids, things that look like they would have been taken in maybe even the 80s, 70s, 80s, or 90s. By saying, like, look at me, I'm a human person, and you can't take that away from me. And this is what whatever my family has created. Like, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I live in this house with my kids, and you can put whatever identity you want on me, but at the end of the day, I tell my story.
Yeah.
So that was such an interesting, hopefully I explained that well.
No, I think that's the connection between that and, like, branding, marketing, talking to your audience, I think is so strong in that, we made these shirts that just say empathy is important, which I always say is important for not being an asshole in the world, but also it's very important from a business standpoint of understanding that those same things that you described, like, your audience as a business wants to see that about you. They want to know that you're not a machine. And then also you need to understand that about them, like that they're human people, and that whether or not they buy your course or, like, hire you to take their photos, that's not the only decision they make in their life. They have a lot of, there's multifaceted, complicated people who have a history and a story and things that they want.
Yeah.
And that's, if you can connect to that in a pretty authentic, direct way, it's not, you're not going to have to advertise yourself so hard.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to have to work so hard at it.
When you were talking about all of the stuff with Kardashians as a brand, I think that a lot of people, like the exact same reason why you said when she came back, it was like very much more like, here is who I am as a human. The idea of owning your own brand as a small business owner, like despite there being so much accessibility with the Kardashians or Kim in general, there's still like, you still are a person with things that you don't share. And so I think as a brand, and you've probably felt this, Hillary, with being more open online and social media and blogging, to me, there's more room on the table for you to be, and this is like you as in anyone listening, you to be more of who you are without just being, without unveiling all of your secrets or being.
Without just like vomiting, like, hey, here, let me tell you the 85 like thoughts I had today that would disturb you.
And I see a lot of people using, even Brene Brown talks about the idea of vulnerability isn't just saying everything as you process it, which if we want to take this way back to the Kardashians, the idea that they experience something and then they talk about it after it's been filmed, letting all of this is getting a little bit deeper than just online courses, but letting yourself experience and learn and process things before sharing about it, I think is also like a huge responsibility. And I not agree. Just in the moment, like word vomiting everywhere. I think it makes the internet a better place.
I mean, I can't think about like, there's no relation to that politically at the current moment at all, never, right? Like never. There's no.
Just take a minute.
Think a little bit.
Yeah.
Breathe.
Please. Pretty please.
And I think, it's fun. I think an interesting thing that's actually happened with my blogging career, and this is part of what's going on in my challenge right now, is that my blogging took off. I don't blog every week, but my blog I blog like once a month. But my articles have been a huge engine for my business because it's helped people kind of connect with what I do. And I don't, conventional wisdom, I'm a copywriter. I should write about copy and marketing, but boring. I don't really want to write about that. So I write about things that I'm experiencing as an entrepreneur and as a human being and as a creative. So I talk about stuff like willpower. I talk about stuff like, creative style. I talk about stuff like the value of rage. I talk about what it really takes to be an entrepreneur and all that stuff. And I find that those have been, I talked about my childhood. I wrote this post called Notes from an Unremarkable Child like a year and a half ago, and it's still one of my most popular posts, strangely enough. Because I think telling the truth that you have to tell, as opposed to just trying to be like, provide your audience with value by like giving them the same how-to guide they can read 50 other places. I think sharing truth is so much more important than sharing like what you feel like you're supposed to say. And that's something that takes practice. That's something that requires being comfortable. And that's a muscle that requires building. And this is, again, what I think Kanye West does so well is because he understands how to manipulate the press, but he always brings his truth to kind of everything that he creates, and he's fearless about it. I know that can make him look like a jackass, and I know that it can make people like make weird judgments of you for being a fan of his, which is so hilarious to me. I'm like, the only people who, it's so lame. I'm just like, amazingly, you're allowed to like things I don't like, and I'm not going to take a big dump on them. Like we can coexist.
I've always thought this.
Yeah,
always.
It's so whack. But the interesting thing is, if you look closer, and what I really enjoyed about 100 Days of Kanye, because I like him as just, I love his music. Yeezus and Life of Pablo and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasies were like the soundtrack of my sales page building and writing. I've memorized like all of those albums. But I almost did like a victory dance to Blood on the Leaves when I finished the fourth module and recorded it. But I was like, oh no, I shouldn't do that. But
did you guys see have you seen him live?
Not yet. Oh, I'm just so sad. I was supposed to, but I didn't have 250 bones to see him at Madison Square Garden when he came. And he canceled the tour.
Oh my gosh, I bet.
But it's on my list, I promise. It's like, that's going to be my, he's coming out with a new album soon, I think. But
December 31st, something's supposed to happen.
Yes, so hype. But again, sorry to start the sentence the third time, just because I'm just too excited for Kanye as a human being.
Yes, keep
going. He has this wonderful line where he's like, if you're a fan of Kanye West, you're a fan of yourself. And it's this really interesting perceived repulsion among the masses to self-confidence and saying like, you know what, I'm the best, I'm a genius, I changed the game. Because he did do all of those things. But it's somehow forbidden to acknowledge it and own that. And I think Kanye West is breaking those rules in that he's saying like, yeah, I'm my favorite rapper. Like my one greatest regret is that I'll never get to see myself perform live. And it's funny. And I think a lot of it's tongue in cheek, but at the same time, it really makes you think about how like you can be famous, but not talk about it too much. Like you can be successful, but not to talk about it too much. And like, of course you don't want everyone going around saying like, I'm the best human being ever. But I think, particularly for Kanye as his role as a rapper trying to break into and successfully breaking into fashion and trying to step forward kind of politically. And although I don't know if I would vote for him in a presidential run, I'm not sure. But he sort of defies convention in a lot of ways that are offensive to people who don't necessarily get it and aren't in the world of creativity and don't see how much courage that requires. And so those people are don't get it, but the people who do are people like us guys who kind of work in the creative field understand again how much courage it takes to break the rules that he's broken and say the things that he says and sort of stomach this criticism because he won't tone himself down or silence himself. And I just got to respect it.
I think the other thing that I love all of that, but I think I wouldn't love that except for it's also paired with everyone who's ever collaborated with him has been like, he's like one of the most like generous, listening, like so like amazing people to collaborate with, totally like takes people's advice, listens to other people.
Lets them do what they love to do.
And so I think there's this thing where, I mean, who cares like what you say when you're being interviewed on a thing? That doesn't matter. Like when you're actually doing your work and when you're actually it's not like he's working with other people and being demanding of them. He's like, hey, I would like you to come help me on this thing. I'm gonna fly you out here, pay for all of your stuff, give you a ton of money and let you do your thing, and then you leave, and then that's awesome.
Chance the Rapper says on Coloring Book, I've met Kanye West, I'm never going to fail. And I mean, it's true. Like he has helped so many rappers. Like I think, was it Kid Cudi, Chance the Rapper? Was it Vince Staples? There was a number of rappers who he's brought kind of from obscurity into the mainstream because he was like, he shares his platform, and he doesn't get enough respect for that.
No, he pulls people.
And again, I just want to reiterate, we can all like different things. So if you're listening to this and it makes you cringe, love yourself a little bit more, and then love the thing that you love. Like that's the best part, is that we can all be like obsessed and excited and into whatever we want to be into, which is awesome.
You're allowed to like it.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring it back to the last question of the interview. And it is, after
already?
this process, I know, right? It went by so fast. After the process of changing the way you make money, you're, from going from client work intensives to retainer to launching this course, what have you learned most about yourself? That's a deep question.
Two things. One, I'm a steamroller and can get anything done that needs to be done, but that doesn't necessarily mean I should. And two, that some money costs too much. And I think that's been, because when you're getting your start and you're like making sure you can survive, and I live in New York, so, being a freelance copywriter and entrepreneur in New York, it's not easy. You always have to be thinking 5 years ahead, and also covering your butt. Like if everything goes south and I can't make rent, like what's plan B? What can I do? What is going to keep me safe and secure and moving forward? But we tend to chase the money. And it's so easy to do that because you're like, oh, you know what? I'm pretty full, but I could take on another project. Screw it. I'll just work a Saturday. Like I could make an extra $2,000 easy. No worries. And then you start and it feels fine. And then you're in it and you're like, I never should have done this. Like that extra couple $1,000s is great in my bank account, but my mental health is deteriorating. I'm so exhausted. I'm getting sick because I worked myself into a flu like multiple times in my first few years of business. Just like working from, I would work till like 3 a.m, sleep till like 11 or noon, get on calls and do it all over again every single day. And it's not good for you. So figuring out how to say no, even when it meant more money because I had hit capacity, has been really useful for me, because even if you say no to something, chances are that person's going to come back around. Chances are there's going to be another opportunity. And the more you trust yourself to know when you have enough on your plate, and yes, you could make the money, but table it for now. The more you get used to doing that, the better a business owner you're going to be, because it leaves room for quality work as opposed to quantity.
So true. I have a coaching client who I'm working with right now who sent us an inquiry like within the first 6 months that we had started doing this. And we had another client who was a little bit not so fun to work with, who said they didn't want us to work with somebody in the same industry because there's a conflict of interest, like all these things. So we didn't work with them. And they came back around 6 months ago and showed up again.
Mm-hmm.
And
years later.
Yeah, years later. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I worked with you now, because back then didn't know what we were doing. And I'm so much, the relationships turned into something beautiful. We're able to help in a lot of different ways. You got to be able to trust. I mean, it's like knowing the long game of.
I totally agree.
Opportunities come back around, and
Yeah, it amazes me. It never fails to amaze me. Even if I felt even if there was an old project from years ago that I don't feel went that well, suddenly I get a Facebook tag from this person who I haven't talked to and be like, I recommend Hillary Weiss as a copywriter. She's the best. And there was somebody who in my challenge group right now who I worked with years ago, and we just never nailed the content. And this is really rare for me, so it makes me really insecure. We never nailed it. Shit, it just spiraled off into infinity, and eventually I stopped hearing from her. So I was like, man, I really wish maybe I could have done a better job, or what was I doing wrong? And in the challenge group, she was like, I'm an old client of Hillary's, and I produced some of my absolute best work with her. And I was like, oh, okay.
Oh,
thanks, man. But you really never
remember that differently.
Yeah, I really do.
It's going to get better. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sort of learning to trust your instincts is a skill that takes time, and learning to be patient and say no and wait for things to come back around when it's the right time. It's a point that's going to get proved to you time and time again if you just make the space. It's okay to say no. It's okay to table things. It's okay if the timing isn't right to let it not be right and just sort of move along and see what happens next. Because at the end of the day, more often than not, it just turns into bigger and better things.
I love it.
Preach.
Hillary, thank you so much for being on our podcast.
If people have listened to all of this every moment and they've been writing notes feverishly about the things Hillary said.
I actually have been taking notes.
Oh, yeah. This is probably, of all the interviews we've ever done, the one where we have taken the most notes, probably for ourselves, or where you've said things and I've looked at Allie and I'd be like, that's the thing.
So true. Yes.
So thank you for that.
Oh, you guys are the best. Thank you so much. It's been so much fun.
If somebody was obsessed with you at this point, an hour into it, and they're like, oh my gosh, I got to get myself some more of her, where would they go find you? How would they pay attention to you? All that stuff.
You have various homes on the interwebs. You can stop by my website, www.hillaryweiss.com. That's HILLARYWEISS.com. My platform for my course, if you're interested in learning how to write your about home or sales page with me, is at thewordshops.org. Hopefully, we're migrating it over this week, so that should be The Word Shops, WORDSHOPS.org. And then you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at HCWeiss. I sometimes regret including my middle initial in that because no one knows my middle name is Claire, but it's at HCWeiss on Twitter and Instagram. I'm on Facebook as Hillary Weiss Copywriting, and I am I on Snapchat anymore? I'm not on Snapchat anymore, really.
Yeah, but I guess I technically am, but not really.
You guys are just there to see Kim.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
checking
true.
to see what Kim did. And
if I'm aging out of any platform, it's Snapchat. But yeah, come say hey. I love meeting new people. If you love this podcast interview, come ping me and say hello. I would love to meet you. Wonderful, wonderful listeners of this podcast. And thank you so much, Adam and Allie, for having me.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for being on it. And we'll include all of the links to everything. And we'll see you later.
Yes, we will. I'll see you in your inbox. Launch ahoy. Thanks, Pat.
Launch ahoy! Welcome to the end of the podcast.
We'd like to announce that the end is near.
Here and here. It's near and here.
That's like some like street evangelist person who has like a sign that says the end is near.
Yeah, but it's the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
So we do every episode at the end, we take 2 questions from listeners or just people who follow us on social media. Questions about business. We haven't really gotten a lot off business.
These are kind of about creativity.
Yeah.
And we're collaborating with designers and things like that.
Yeah, so the first question is from Madison on Instagram, who actually was once our intern.
In the past.
Hello, Madison.
Hello, Madison.
You're probably listening to this on your headphones, Madison, so hello. She asked, how do you guys avoid burnout, or at least appear to, when you deal with so many clients, have had people on retainer, manage employees, manage interns, etc.? Which I loved how she says, or appear to, hit burnout.
Well, she was really difficult to manage, so we were very burned out when she was around.
She was just the worst. No,
she was so demanding.
She was actually one of the pockets of time where there was just one intern.
Yeah.
So she was sort of like our only child.
She was like a lone intern.
Yeah.
Lone turn.
A lone turn. That's kind of like lone.
So I have really specific thoughts of answering this question.
Okay, let's hear it.
My first one is, we don't always appear to be tired or burnt out, because we've learned over time that it is nice for other people to acknowledge that we're tired and working really hard. It doesn't serve anybody, and it doesn't make anyone excited to work with us.
Yeah.
And so we work really hard not to complain. You won't see us complaining on social media about our clients or about a project. Mm-hmm. You won't see us doing those things. You're not going to see us just going on and on about how tired we are, and because we just don't do that stuff.
Right. Even though I just tweeted 2017 is exhausting, I'm talking more about the world as it stands, not my life.
Yeah, and you've had
Yeah. But I just thought it was funny. We're we don't complain about we're tired, and I just tweeted that.
But we don't.
Yeah.
I think it's one thing to complain about people.
Yeah.
So we don't do that.
Yeah. Because these people make our lives what it is. It's very rich because of those people. Yeah. And we do a good job of not keeping people around who are exhausting.
Right. And so there's no reason. It's nobody else's job to make us happy.
Yeah.
It's our job to be happy and fulfilled and energized. And so when you don't dump that on people, I don't think you go around complaining all day long about, oh my gosh, I'm so tired and exhausted and burnt out and things that. So the appearance part is intentional, but deeper than that, it is also taking care of yourself, and you just have to figure out how you're wired. And so Madison, I think, even Madison working in here, probably our first interns, we didn't understand how to manage people or work with people or communicate. We're still learning about that stuff, but there was times where Allie and I would say, I just don't like having to go into work and take care. I'm busy enough with my own work, let alone working on somebody else's stuff. Yeah. Which is not a good attitude to have if you have people on your team. And so it's figuring out at this point in my life, I don't want to work with people in this way, or at this point in my life, I'm ready to start to invest in others and bring other people in. So you just have to be, I think, just really honest about what you're capable of, how you're wired, and interact with people in a way that fills you up and makes you excited, find your own time.
I would also say learning what our strengths are through Strength Finders. We actually have a workshop coming up that works with our friend Stacy, who's a Strength Finder coach, to understand what you're really good at. But through that test, I also learned through her and her interpretation that if I don't have space and time, I will feel maxed out, and that's where I hit burnout. So it's not even we're always very productive. I don't like to say busy. We're very productive and we're working with a lot of things. But if I don't have my evenings to myself, or if I don't spend, even last night we stayed out later with friends on a weeknight, but that is on a school night. But that's actually, it makes me feel like I have space. It's not even that I just slept more. It was that I felt like I had the space to do something social. Yeah. So I think 5 years ago, I would have said, I need to be alone to refuel. I do need to be alone still to refuel as an introvert, but then I also need to understand or to feel that there's space in my life to do other things, to do the laundry.
And so there's times where, so for Allie, practically, I've seen her schedule 4 hours of her day to go home and like, you'll do things like laundry or like cook
watch TV,
or watch TV, kind of in the middle of a day, which just is this thing of like, oh my gosh, this is like what vacation is like, where there's no.
And
so
I
I think it's like a trick kind of giving yourself that space. And I've also seen her treat her weekends differently, or treat a Saturday differently, or being like, hey, I'm going to work on some stuff on Saturday, but Sunday, like, I'm going to shut down.
Yeah. And I've seen with you, like, setting up recurring coffee dates with your friends versus, like, staying out late, getting coffee earlier in the morning, waking up 4 hours before you have to be at work so that you can write. So it's not this, like, you don't become lazier to avoid burnout. I think you just, you find the things that activate you, and you make sure that you're not giving all your energy to other people 24/7.
Truth.
Good question, Madison.
Great question.
The second one is from Tony on Instagram. She asks, what's the best way to translate my vision to a graphic designer? What should I expect from a relationship with a designer? What should I have prepared, and what should I expect them to provide?
So in this episode, we talked to Hillary,
who,
like, of everyone we've ever worked with, probably did the single best job of... Like, she provided so much that we were kind of like, oh my gosh, you have all of this organized, very thought out.
Yeah.
And usually we have to pull people into that space, but she...
I could talk a little bit more specifically.
Yeah.
She first started talking to us, and we cover this a little bit in the episode, but talking to us about how she needs the sales page that really communicates, like, the vision and the course. But what she provided was a very robust creative brief with, she even titled the, like, style of the design that she was looking for, with like funny puns and examples and mood boards. And so if I was thinking of from the beginning, she was very clear about her vision. She really let everyone execute and do what they wanted to with that starting point. But we weren't all just like taking a stab in the dark at like what we thought she wanted. And so the relationship that I have with our best clients, which I would say all of our clients right now are the best, are the ability for me as a designer for there to be candor. So for me to be able to say, I think that actually doesn't work, or for my client to say the same thing. We respect each other. We think we're smart, and we all have processes. So the Wonder Jam has I'm not a part of it. They're company so over cool. There, yeah. We have processes for our clients, and our clients fit into that process. And so I can't speak for every designer because every designer is different. But if you're looking for a designer, I think you should be able to be honest. I think you should be able to communicate what you need, talk about your goals, but look for a process in your designer. Like look for them to have one. If they're just sort of like letting you run the whole show, I actually don't think that probably is best.
Yeah. I think it's a way I try and phrase it a lot is either your designer is telling you what to do, or you're telling the designer what to do.
Yeah.
And the more, if you can think of, is my business and am I in a place where if a designer told me what to do and change something, would I listen to them? Yeah. And if your answer is no, then you need to find somebody who you can tell what to do.
Yeah.
But if you want to go trust an artist or a creative to kind of take your vision further, then this is one of the things I saw Hillary do is everyone she worked with, it's not like they just gave her back, spit back to her exact thing.
Yep.
It's like, I was really inspired by how you described that, and so I went and did this other thing that's more or something. And so I think you just have to think through what are you really willing to work with?
Yeah.
And if you want to really dictate to somebody, you make the process.
Yeah.
Be like, this is how we're going to work through it, and you can find, you also pay less when you're dictating to people what to do. You pay more if people tell you what to do.
That's so true. But yeah, I think overall, just you'll get a good feeling about it. Be able to talk to them. It shouldn't be this forced partnership.
A mood board is key. Getting visuals that you're inspired by in front of them is a nice way so that if you use the wrong words, they'll still see the same visuals. I think we found that to be key.
And then lastly, I think just ask, what do I get out of this contract? What are my deliverables? Don't shy away from getting those sort of ducks in a row to make sure that you understand what's getting delivered, they understand what's getting delivered, and then I think it makes the rest of the relationship feel very light.
We cover a lot of this in our Branding on a Budget online course, so if someone is listening to this and wants to get a little bit more clear on that, I think if you go to thewonderjam.com/classes and the Branding on a Budget is there at the bottom, you can hop in.
Yeah. If anything, it doesn't necessarily only teach you how to brand yourself on a budget, but it will help you think through how to prepare to work with someone else.
Yeah. It'll make you very easy to work with.
Well, I think that's it.
Well, I think we did it.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll talk to you next time.